Hello, good evening. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Can we start now? Can we start the session? Okay, let's start. So this is hello. Oh, Kalhari. Tapoddak inadiki. Hello, good evening. Now we can start the session. So, may I know, is there a course coordinator for this session, for this lecture? This, who is the course coordinator? Course coordinator කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවද මේ subject එකට? කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් course coordinator විදියට එනවද? ඉන්නවද කවුරු හරි? නැත්නම් කාගේ හරි නමක් කවුරු හරි propose කරන්න course coordinator විදියට? Okay, you can discuss and let me know the name of the course coordinator, and please give me course coordinator's contact number. Then I can contact that person, and if I want to know something with regard to your feedback, so I can collect it from that course coordinator. Okay, we can start the session. So in your first session, I have explained what is taxation, uh, and these things, that means characteristics of the taxation, objectives of the taxation. So I have explained everything. So what these are the taxes administered by the Commissioner General of Inland Revenue. After that, we started income tax. So now we have Income Tax Act number 24 of 2017. I have already shared this document with you, this presentation, and in addition to that, I have shared employment income presentation, and all the acts, Inland Revenue Principal Act and the Amendment Acts. In addition to that, gazette notifications and some circulars issued by the Commissioner General with regard to that employment income. So after that, time to time, I will share these documents with you. So today I want just to remind you the previous, with regard to the previous lecture. So that is why I started it from here. Then this is the outline of the Income Tax Act. Then the chapters and sections. After that, I explained about the schedules available in the Income Tax Act. Then I explained about the sections, subsection, paragraph, and subparagraphs. If you know these things properly, then you can very easily you can read the act, you can understand the act. So that is why I wanted to share these details with you. After that, I explained about the charging provision. So this is the most important, most relevant provision, that this is like our head. So this is the most important provision. From this charging section, we impose taxes for the person. After that, each and every bold and highlighted letter I have explained: year of assessment, person, taxable income, withholding payments, and tax credits. So everything I have explained. After that, we can move to more descriptive explanation. So here, what is the year of assessment? Then what is the assessable income? How do we calculate that assessable income? Then the person, who is the person? Then entity, then the residency. So I explain who is the person, who is the resident person and non-resident person. What is the difference between resident person and non-resident person? After that, how to determine the residency, whether that person is a resident person or not. After that, this is for the individual, to determine whether that person is a resident person or non-resident person. These are the main things we have to consider. After that, reside rule, I explained reside rule. Then the practical exercise also I have given you. Then the partnership residency, trust, how do we determine whether partnership or trust or a company's residency. Finally, I explained about the sources of income. So sources of income is the beginning of the way to towards the taxable income. So that is why I explained about the sources of income. After that, one by one, each source we should be studied. So employment income, business income, investment income, and other income. So these are the main sources of income that we have 4 income sources, and relevant sections also I have mentioned in this slide. After that, how to determine the relevant source, because it is very difficult to draw a line in between employment income, business income, and investment income. So these are the main criterias we should consider to determine whether that is business income, investment income, or uh, employment income. So you can read these things very carefully. Then you can understand how to determine the relevant source for the calculation of taxable income. So I have explained all these things. Then the method of accounting. So I think I have done this slide also. Then the method of accounting. So method of accounting means how do we treat some income with regard to that respective source. That means if we are calculating a person's or an individual's employment income, at that time we have to consider it on a cash basis. Basis means when we are receiving some income with regard to that employment, then the time we receive that cash, that amount we consider for the taxation. For an example, if we receive a bonus for the year 2023 in 2025 September, so that means we have to consider the September date as the receipt of that income. So that is the cash basis. අපිට අද හැදුනා හම්බ වුණා නම් අද දවසේ තියෙන tax law එකට තමයි අපි employment income එක calculate කරන්නේ, or either it is employment income or investment income if we are considering an individual. So I think you know who is the individual, who is the person, and what is the entity. So if that income is a business income, for an individual or an entity, business income will be considered for accrual basis. That means whether we have received cash or not, the accrual basis is the concept. So we have to calculate taxable income based on that accrual basis if we are calculating business source. If it is an investment or employment source for an individual, cash basis should be considered. And if it is a business income, accrual basis should be considered. So this is the summary of the presentation, the introduction presentation. That means, first of all, we have to categorize our income into relevant source. First of all, we should have one basket. We should put all our income into that basket. After that, we have to segregate that income into the relevant basket. We have 4 baskets: employment, business, investment, or other. So employment is the dominant one. Because of that, if we are selecting a one income, first of all, we have to consider whether that income should be categorized under employment. If it is not, then we have to consider whether it is a business income. Then after that, if it is not a business income, then only we have to move to the investment income. Likewise, first of all, employment, then business, after that, investment. If we cannot categorize an income under these 3 sources, then only we have to categorize that income under other income source. Luckily, up to now, we don't have an income to be categorized under other income. So after that, what do we have to do? We have to deduct excluded items. So that excluded items also provided under each section. Employment income under section 5, business income under section 6, investment income under section 7, other income under section 8. So in that sections, there are some specific subsections. In that subsections, it has given exempted, excluded items. So we have to study them. Finally, we have to deduct some expenditure if that is allowable. So if we are considering an employment income, no deductions are available. That means now when we are going for a work, for an employment, at that time we use some uniforms. At that time we are using our transportation mode, and we are wearing our clothes, shoes, dresses, food, but we cannot deduct any expenditure under employment income. So that is why I have mentioned it in red color and I have mentioned as no. So no deductions are available for the employment income. So after that we will have the assessable income. But when we are calculating the business income, we should calculate the profit of the business income. For that profit, we called assessable income. We are using that term assessable income because when we are calculating the profit, at that time we are deducting expenses according to the uh, accounting standards or accounting principles. But for the assessable income calculation, we should deduct expenses according to the income tax law. So that is why we are calling it assessable income, not the profit. So assessable income it is more similar to the profit, but calculated in accordance with the provisions of the Income Tax Act. That means from section 10 to section 19, there are deduction rules. We can deduct that expenditure according to that provision. So that is why we are calling that profit as assessable income. So for the investment income also, we can deduct some expenses if there are, that means we are we are considering that investment income as passive income. Passive income means without any effort, we can collect income. For an example, we deposit our money in a bank, we will receive interest. Without any effort, we will receive interest income. So no effort should be made to collect that amount. So because of that, we call it passive income. So for the passive income, even though that is a passive income, sometimes we may have some expenses with regard to that income. So we can deduct that income. So this expenditure means any expenditure that incurred in respect of the production of that income. That means here we can deduct only the expenses under section 10 to section 19, the expenses incurred in the production of this business income or in the production of this investment income. So that expenditure can be deducted when we are calculating the assessable income. So up to when we are calculating the assessable income, the deductions are available if that deduction is incurred in respect of the production of the same income. So we call them allowable expenses for the calculation of assessable income. So for the employment, no expenditure. For business income or for the investment income, expenditure can be deducted. For the other income also, expenses are not allowable. After that, we will have the assessable income. Then what we have to do? After calculating the assessable income from each source, that means assessable income from employment, business, investment, and other, the total amount will be considered as total assessable income. Now we have the total assessable income. From that total assessable income, we can deduct some more two expenses. That means one is the relief. Actually, it is not an expenditure, but it is a relief. Reliefs can be deducted in accordance with Section 52. Not only the relief, qualifying payments also there. Qualifying payments also can be deducted under Section 52. The deduction is available under Section 52, but the deductions are given under Schedule 5 of the Act. So, in the Act, there are 6 schedules. So, Schedule 5 is for the relief and qualifying payment. So, if you can read that relief and Schedule 5, you can understand what are the available reliefs and what are the qualifying payments. So reliefs means personal relief. So mainly personal relief. Personal relief means amount that have given tax free. In the practical world, we call it personal relief. The amount is for the year of assessment 25-26, it is 1.8 million. So that is why we are telling that when we are calculating the taxation, we said that we say if you have more than 150,000 per month, or if you have more than 1.8 million as your income, then only you are liable for income tax purposes. So these reliefs are available only for the individuals. That means if you are calculating an individual's income tax liability, at that time only you can deduct reliefs. If you are calculating company's entity liability, you are not entitled to deduct reliefs. So you should know the difference between the calculation of an individual or a company. So after that, there are some expenses. We call that expenses a qualifying payment. So qualifying payment also can be deducted when we are calculating the assessable income. That amount will be deducted against the assessable income. So qualifying payments also some kind of expenditure, but that expenditure are not directly connected to the expenditure given under here. That means under 10 to 11, 19, expenses are directly relevant to the income. For the generation of income, we are incurring some expenses. That expenses can be deducted under here. That means when we are calculating the assessable income, we can deduct that kind of expenditure. But there are some more expenses that are not directly connected to the production of income. But we should spend that amount. We should pay some amount for some purposes. For an example, donations. Since we need some CSR, so because of that, we should donate some amount to some person, for a company, for an individual. This qualifying payment is available. So qualifying payments are available both to individuals and entities. So that one also provided under Section 52 and under Schedule 5. So that kind of expenses also can be deducted in arriving at the taxable income. Okay, now you are in the taxable income. So for the calculation of taxable income, we have to go step by step from employment income to other income, from the income to assessable income, then to taxable income. So now our main target is to calculate the taxable income of an individual or a company through this process. එතකොට අපේ ප්‍රධානම ටාගට් එක වෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ සෝසස් යටතේ මේ කණ්ඩායම මේ මම කියලා තියෙන විදිහට මේ ස්ටෙප්ස් ටික ෆලෝ කරලා මේ assessable income එක calculate කරලා taxable income එක calculate කරලා finally we have to apply tax rate for that taxable income. So if you can remember our charging provision, that charging provision says this everything. මතකයිනේ charging provision එක මුල ඉඳලා අගට වෙනකන් කොහොමද කරන්න කියලා තමයි කියන්නේ. So now we know what is the taxable income. What we have to do is we have to apply relevant tax rate for the calculation of payable tax. For that calculation, we should apply the relevant tax rate. For an individual, we have progressive tax rates. Progressive means based on the income level, that tax rate will be increased. That means 6, 18, 24, 30, 36, like that. If it is a company has only a flat rate, that is maybe 30%. If it is betting or gaming or liquor and tobacco business, then applicable tax rate is 40%, like that. Only 2-3 rates are available, but in general, we have 30% income tax rate for an entity. Then after applying that rate to the taxable income, we have payable tax. From that payable tax, we can deduct available tax credits. Not only the tax credits available in the country, in the domestic tax credits, but if there are some tax credits relevant for the foreign income, that tax credit also can be deducted, because we are calculating not only the individuals, not only the resident individuals or resident persons tax liability, but we are calculating sometimes non-residents tax liability. So because of that, some foreign tax credits also may be available. Then what are the tax credits? Tax credit means a taxes deducted by earlier. Earlier means before we are calculating the payable amount, we have already deducted some taxes. We have already deducted some taxes. Sometimes it is not done by ourselves, but some other person can be deducted it. For an example, when you are receiving your employment income as a salary, OT, other allowances, bonuses, like that, when you are receiving that income monthly, what your employer do? What your employer, that employer should deduct a bit from your salary. So that deduction is a tax credit, because based on your employment income, the employer deduct a bit from your salary. When you are receiving interest income, the banks deduct 10% withholding tax from your investment income. So when you are calculating your income part, income for the employment, that salary is considered. So you have net salary, you will receive net salary, but for this calculation of this assessable income, you should consider gross salary, not the net salary. That means you should consider the gross salary. From that gross salary, they deduct EPIT. So that EPIT can be deducted under this tax credit. When you are receiving interest income from a bank, at that time, when they are giving you that interest amount, they deduct withholding tax. We call it advance income tax or AIT. So you have to put your interest income in the beginning in this cage under income, under investment income. It should be a gross income. That means suppose you have received 100,000 interest income, but they are giving you only 90,000, because 10,000 they are deducting as AIT, withholding tax or advance income tax. What they should do, after deducting that 10%, they should send that to the department with your name, with your TIN number, with your identity card number. So we have that document, we have that income, and we have that information. According to that information, we can give you the credit available with you. So after deducting that credit, you will have the balance tax payable. Then APIT also, after deducting your employer, the APIT part from your employment income, you should mention your gross income here, gross salary here, not the net salary, not after deducting pay, APIT, but before deducting APIT. That amount should be mentioned here. Then excluded items can be excluded. Exempt items can be removed. No allowable expenses. Then you will have assessable income. Then you can deduct relief, 1.8 million relief. Then if there are some qualifying payments that also can be deducted. After that, you will have taxable income. From that taxable income, again you will apply relevant tax rates. Finally, you will have the payable tax. From that payable tax, you can deduct APIT part that was deducted by the employer when they are giving salary or employment income to you. So now I think you can understand APIT or pay or withholding tax is not a separate tax. It is like an advance income tax. So it is like an advance. It is like an advance payment of income tax. So it is paid by the deducted person. That means we call them withholding agent. So when we are receiving some amount from another person, that another person deduct that income tax on behalf of us. So after deducting that amount, they give us the net amount. But when we are calculating the tax liability, we should consider the gross amount. Finally, we can deduct that deducted APIT or AIT or withholding tax as a tax credit. Then we will have balance tax payable, or sometimes it will be a refund. Maybe a refund or a payable amount. If it is a payable amount, we should pay that payable amount to the department. If it is a refund, that amount will be refunded by the department. So this is the summary of our tax calculation. I think you can understand how we should calculate income tax liability, whether this can be an individual or an entity. Okay. If you have any question with regard to this calculation, you can ask. If you don't have a question, then we can move to the next session, that is employment income. හරි ප්‍රශ්න මොන හරි තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න පුළුවන්. If you don't have questions, we can move to the next session. Yes, there is a chat. Understood. Yes, very good. Understood. ඔක්කොටම තේරුණාද? Shall I move to the next one? Okay. Then we can move to the next slide, set of the slide, that means employment income. Yes. Madam, can I know about claiming taxes and about tax certificate? Tax certificate. So, what do you mean by tax certificate and what do you mean by claiming taxes? So, claiming taxes and tax certificate. Which certificate? That means T10? Do you want to know about T10? Or what is the tax certificate? Yes, okay. T10 means a document that given by the employer. That means employer is the person, he is the responsible person to deduct APIT. APIT means it is like a pay. Earlier we called it payee, but now we are using the term APIT. So when we are receiving our employment income, they are the responsible person to deduct APIT on behalf of us. And after that, they should send that deducted amount to the department with the identification of yourself. That means your TIN number, your NIC number should be mentioned in the document that they are sent to the department. Then only we can give you the credit. You can request that credit, but if it is not available in the document under your employer, because employer should give the return mentioning all deducted amounts with your TIN number and NIC number. Then we can reconcile employer's details and your return. You should request that amount and it should be available in the schedule of the employer. Then very easily we can give you the credit. If that employer has not submitted their return, at that time you can request your claims after providing some confirmation, some certificate. Then when employer, after deducted by the employer with a bit from your salary, they should give you a deducted document. In that document, they should mention for which period they are deducting, what is the amount they considered for that tax deduction, and what is the deducted amount. That document is the T10 form. You can request that T10 form from your employer. They should give it to you. Once a year, they will give it to you because our taxable period is from April to next year, March. So after March 31st, they should give that tax deducted form or T10 form to you. Based on the details available in that T10 form, you can fill your income tax return because you don't know what are the amounts considered for the deduction of employment income. So because of that, you can use that document to fill your income tax return. In the return, there is a special place to mention employment income. So in that place, you have to mention all the amount and the deducted amount by the employer. So that is the T10 form. Okay, Terunada? Clear? Okay. Now we can move to the employment income. Okay. Now we are moving to the employment income. I think you can see my presentation for employment income. So, first of all, you should know what is employment income. So, employment involves provision of labor for gain. That means we should give our service to another person. That person should give us some amount as a fee for our service. It is a combination. Actually, it is a combination, but it is very difficult to draw a line in between business income or an employment income. So I have already explained what is the difference between employment income and business income in my previous session. So for the employment income, under section 195, I think you can remember, section 195 is the interpretation section. Interpretation section means in that section you can see all the specific words, most of the specific words, meaning of the specific words. So for an employment, special interpretation is there. So it says employment means a position. That means there should be a position of an individual in the employee of another person. There should be a position. Position means a designation. That is the difference between service provider and an employee. If we are an employee, we have a special provision. A commissioner, a doctor, a lecturer, an engineer, clerk, director. So that is the position. But for a service provider, we don't have that kind of position. We are not giving them an appointment letter. So for the employment, there should be a position. So that position can be a manager of an entity. So that means a position of an individual entitling the individual to a fixed or ascertainable remuneration in respect of services performed. That means there is a remuneration package. There should be a position, there should be a remuneration, a public office held by an individual. There, it is also considered as an employment. A position of an individual to whom any payment is made. So all these are an employment. Because for the calculation of employment income, we should know what is the employment income. What is the employment? First of all, we should know what is the employment. So that is why I have given this slide. Then a position as a corporation or company director. That means if a person is a director of a company or a corporation, that position also considered as an employment. එතකොට අපිට අපි කොතන හරි තැනක වැඩ කරනකොට අපිට පොසිෂන් එකක් තියෙනවා, තනතුරක් තියෙනවා, අන්න එතන එම්ප්ලොයිමන්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා. But here you can see that term means මේ ටික අනිවාර්යෙන් මේක ඇතුළත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. මෙතනින් එහාට මොකද හිතන්න එපා. But it says includes a past, present or prospective employment. It can be either past employment or a present employment, or sometimes it can be a future employment. හරි විහිළුවක් නේද? Future employment. What is the meaning of prospective? Okay, we can discuss it later. Past. Tell me one of the past employment. මොකද්ද past employment එකකට තියෙන හොඳම example එක? අපි අතීතයේදී කාට හරි සර්විස් එකක් දුන්නා. දැන් අපිට ඒ වෙනුවට ලැබෙනවා ඉන්කම් එකක්. මොකක්ද අපි ඒකට කියන්නේ? Now we are not working. Earlier we were there as an employee. So now we are receiving income. අපිට දැන් pension හම්බ වෙනවා. අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් නේද ආ pension එක හම්බ වෙන්නේ දැන්නේ මම දැන් employee නෙවෙයිනේ. මම දැන් රස්සාව කරන්නේ නැහනේ කියන්න බෑ. Why? අපි අතීතයේ in the past we worked there. But now we are receiving an income. Sometimes we work there for last 2 years. There was some salary not yet paid. Now we are receiving that salary. Now we can receive some bonus with regard to the previous period when we were there. අපි ඉස්සර හිටියා, අපි ඉස්සර රස්සාව කරා. ඒ කාලේ ලැබිච්ච නැති දෙයක් දැන් අද ලැබෙනවා. අද ලැබෙනකොට කියන්න පුළුවන් මට හම්බ වෙනවද? මම ඒක එම්ප්ලොයි නෙවෙයිනේ දැන් කියලා. No, we can't say. Why? It includes past, present and prospective employment. So suppose we are going to work somewhere in future. But now they are willing to give us something with regard to that future employment. That is also a part of the employment. එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි තාම රස්සාවට ගිහිල්ලවත් නැහැ. අපි රස්සාවකට යන්න හිතාගෙන ඉන්නවා තව මාස කීපයකින් ලබන අවුරුද්දේ හරි. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලෝ අපිට කීයක් හරි දැන් දෙනවා. අපිව රිසර්ව් කරලා තියාගන්න ඊ රස්සාවට. අපි වාට මෙච්චරක් දෙන්න වෙන කොහෙවත් යන්න එපා. අපි ළඟට එන්න කියලා. So that is a prospective. So if we receive that kind of income, it is also in respect of this employment. So that means if we are receiving some income in respect of this employment, that kind of income should be categorized under employment income. Then a manager. There is a specific definition for the term manager. Manager in relation to an entity, because managers are there in an entity, means a counselor, director, manager, member, officer. So these are the specific wordings applicable for the manager. Then it says means, in addition to that, it includes working partner of a partnership. Sometimes there are some working partners in a partnership. That person will be considered as a manager and a trustee of a trust. A person treated as a manager of an entity by any law. Sometimes in some laws, they is considered as manager. A non-resident person with respect to a Sri Lankan permanent establishment owned by a person, that person also a manager. So now you know two words, you know two definition for two words. One is employment, the second one is manager. Then employee. We are employee. Employee means an individual engaged in employment. ඔන්න දැන් මෙතනට තමයි අපි යන්නේ. කවුද මේ employee කියන්නේ? Employee means engaged in employment. So for this purpose, we should know what is employment. ඒකයි මම අර කලින් මේ employment මොකක්ද කියන්නේ කියලා කිව්වේ. Then the employer. When employer making payment to employee with regard to this employment, that income should be categorized under employment income. That is why you should know who is employee, what is employment, and who is employer. Then employer means the person who engages or remunerates an employee in employment, or pays a pension or other remuneration to a former employee. So now I think you can understand who is the employer. So in the act, specifically mention who are the employer, which person we should consider as an employer for the purpose of employment. Okay. This is the table given in that. It says if it is a company or a body of person, the employer should be director, secretary general, secretary, manager, or this kind of people. If it is a trust, the trustee or trustees of the trust. If it is a non-resident person, the agent or attorney of such person in Sri Lanka, he is the employer. So a government institution, accountant or director of finance or administrative officer or a similar person, head of the department, a secretary, ministry, a chairman of a commission, all are the employer of that kind of institution. So the column 2 explains who are the employer for the organization mentioned under column 1. So now you can understand who are the employer. Employer කියන්නේ කවුද කියලා දැන් තේරෙනවා. Then we can move to the employment income versus business income. So I have already explained the difference between employment income and business income. So I have explained it is very difficult to draw a line in between employer and a service provider or independent contractor. I have given some main characteristics of employee and an independent contractor in my previous presentation. So these are the main factors, main characteristics we considered. So I have already explained these things. Therefore, I am not going to explain it again and again. ඔයගලන්ට මතක ඇති මං කිව්වා කොහොමද වැඩේ කරන්නේ කවුද වැඩේ කරන්නේ අපි කොහොමද මෙයාව හඳුනාගන්නේ. එතකොට මේ හඳුනා ගන්න විදිය I have already explained in my previous presentation. So this is also the same thing. You can read these things because this is also I have already explained. So for the employee, we are deducting EPF, ETF, gratuity like that. But for independent service provider, we are not deducting that kind of thing. Independent service provider, the employee, the කියලා හඳුනා ගන්න ඕන අපි consider කරන්න ඒ කෙනෙකුගේ service එක sources of income. එතකොට employee කරන්න කියන්නේ employment එකක් තිබිය යුතුමයි. employer කෙනෙක් ඉන්න ඕනේ, employee කෙනෙක් ඉන්න ඕනේ. So I have explained this one also. This example also I have explained in my previous presentation. Now we can move to the gains and profits from employment under section 5(2). Prior to that, I want to show you the act. So let's remove, just we can move from this presentation to the act. So I'm going to show you the act. In the act, it says like this. Can you see the document? This is a consolidated version of the Income Tax Act. So what is the meaning of consolidated version? Can you see? Can you see the document? Can you see the document?
Okay, madam.
Can?
No, madam.
No,
Yes.
madam.
No.
Now, okay, madam.
Now, okay, no? Yes. Okay. So this is the consolidated version. Consolidated version means we have incorporated all amendments to the Principal Act. So you can find this in our website. It is a huge document. We took our first Principal Act. To that Principal Act, we have incorporated all the amendments. So you can see in different colors. So for each one, we have incorporated all the amendments. So now we are in this document. Now you know what is the taxable income, then the assessable income. So now we want to move to the employment income. It is under section 5. So this is the first 1, 2, 3 is the section. So section 5 is for employment income. Let's move to that section 5, because you should know how to read Income Tax Act. මං හිතන්නේ පේනවා ඇති ඔක්කොමලට. පේන්නේ නැත්නම් මට කියන්න. Okay. So section 5 is for the employment income. The right side you can see the wording, that is employment income, we call it marginal note. This big 5 is the section, and number 1 to within bracket are sections, subsections. So, subsection 1 of section 5. Subsection 2 of section 5. Paragraph A of subsection 2 of section 5. This is how we are reading our tax act. So these are paragraphs. These two are subsections. So this is a section. So we have specific section for employment income. In this section, under subsection 1, it says an individuals. Here, we are using the term individual, not the person. Why? Because this section is applicable only for an individual. That is why we are using that term, individual. And individuals' income from an employment. Now we should know what is an employment. For a year of assessment. For a year of assessment, you know what is the year of assessment. That is a 12-month period beginning from April to ending March 31st. Shall be the individuals. We use the term shall, not may. Shall කිව්වම අනිවාර්යයි. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මෙහෙම වෙන්න ඕනේ. Shall be the individuals' gains and profits from the employment for that year of assessment. If we are considering the year of assessment 25-26, now we are going to consider the income relevant for that period. So for the year of assessment 25-26. So subsection 1 of section 5 is for just for an introduction of the employment income. Then subsection 2. Subsection 2 says, in calculating an individual's gains and profits from an employment for a year of assessment, the following amounts received or derived by the individual during the year of assessment from the employment shall be included. So what is the meaning of that? When we are considering an employment income, the income received during that year of assessment shall be included. So if we have received some income from employment during this year of assessment, we shall include. අපි අනිවාර්යෙන් මේක එකතු කළ යුතුයි. මෙතන තියෙන්නේ include කරන්න ඕනේවා. එතකොට now it is very easy to identify what are the income should be categorized under employment income. So we can go one by one. We can move one by one. Payment of salary, wages, leave pay, OT, fees, pension, commission, gratuity, bonus, other similar payments. That means everything we are receiving from our employer should be considered, should be included for the employment income. That is paragraph A. Paragraph B says payments of personal allowance. Allowance, that means telephone allowance, traveling allowance, uniform allowance, meal allowance, entertainment allowance. All allowances should be included for the employment income, including any cost of living, subsistence, rent, entertainment or travel allowance. එනම් මොනවාද? ලැබෙන හැම දෙයක්ම මෙතන තියෙනවා. Then C. Payments providing discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual or an associate of the individual. What is that? කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන් මේ මොන වගේවද කියලා? කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන් මේක මොනවද කියලා. ඕනෑම ලැන්ග්වේජ් එකකින් අපි කතා කරලා ඉගෙන ගමු. දැනුමනේ වැදගත්. No issue. ඕන කෙනෙක්ට මාත් එක්ක කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. We can discuss. අපිට ඩිස්කස් කර කර යනකොට තමයි මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක මතක තියාගන්න ලේසි. Therefore you can ask any question at any time. So payments providing discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual or associate of the individual. So what kind of income is it? Yes, if we are making some payment, suppose it is for my spouse or my children, but after that, the employer reimburse that amount. මොන වගේ දෙයක්ද? For an example. මට ගෙයක් දෙනවා. මට ගෙයක් දීලා ඉවර වෙලා ගෙවල් කුලිය එයා දෙනවා. ඒක මගේ ඉන්කම් එකක් වෙනවා. ඒ ගෙයක් හොයාගන්න එක මගේ රාජකාරියක්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ මගේ දරුවගේ ටියුෂන් ෆී එක ගෙවනවා. මොකක් හරි හේතුවක් හින්දා. මගේ හොස්පිටල් චාර්ජ් එකක් ගෙවනවා. මම ගිහිල්ලා මෙඩිකල් බිල් එකක් ගෙවනවා. ගෙවුවට පස්සේ මම මගේ ආයතනයට දුන්නා මේක රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. So that is also a part of the benefit from my employment. So that is the reimbursement of expenses. So if we are making a payment on behalf of us ourselves, after that we are providing that bill, they will reimburse it. So that kind of reimbursements are also considered as a benefit from the employment. The next one, payments for the individual's agreement to condition of employment. Condition of employment. Sometimes they are giving some conditions. For that condition, they are making some payment. So that is a condition, agreement, or for a condition. If you are doing like this, we will give some money. So they are giving some money for that condition. It is a part of the income, part of the employment income. Payments for redundancy or loss or termination of employment. හරිම අසාධාරණයි නේද? රස්සාව නැති වෙනවා. ඒ වෙනුවට payment එකක් කරනවා. ඒකත් මෙතනට include කරන්න කියනවා. Here should be included. Subject to paragraph F of subsection 3. Oh, we have given another subsection. So subject to that subsection, retirement contributions made to a retirement fund on behalf of the employee and retirement payments received in respect of the employment. So that means retirement contributions made to a fund. That means we have retirement funds. It is not directly paid to us. There is a fund. So sometimes employer made some contributions to the retirement fund on behalf of us. That amount should be considered as our income, and employee and retirement payments received in respect of the employment. එතකොට මොනවාද මේ pension? pension එකක් අපිට හම්බෙනවා නම් ඒකත් employment income එකේ part එකක් කියනවා. The next one, payments or transfers to another person for the benefit of the individual or an associate person of the individual. So not only through the individual, but associate person of the individual. Who are the associate person of the individual? Associate person, husband, wife, children, parents, all are associate persons of that individual. So they are making payments or transfers to something, some benefit. Since I am an employee of that organization. For an example, my son got through the examination. They are giving some present, prize, some benefit to my son. They are giving it since I am an employee of that organization. So my son received it because I am an employee of that organization. So because of that amount also should be considered as my employment income. Then the fair market value of benefits received or derived by virtue of the employment. That means fair market value of benefits. That means sometimes we are receiving lot of things, but that is not in cash. For we are receiving a vehicle for travel purpose. We are receiving a house. It is not in cash, but it is also a benefit. So we call it a benefit. If we are receiving a benefit like that, fair market value of that benefit should be considered as our employment income. Then a gift. If we are receiving a gift from my employment, since I am an employee of that organization, then it is a gift from my employer. So it should be included under my employment income. Then the share option. If my employer allowed some shares to me, and when I'm exercising that option at that time, I have to consider it under my employment income. Hari. These are the items we have to include under my employment income. Okay. මතක ඇතිනේ මම අර පෙන්නුව ටේබල් එකක් සමරි කියලා. එතන අර පළවෙනිම ලයින් එකේ ඉන්කම් කියලා තියෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ ඉන්කම් තමයි. Hi, madam. Is this document is available in LMS? I can't remember I shared this document or not. I will share it with you if I have not shared yet. And you can find this document in in our website. So in the website, you can see this document. If it is difficult to download, I will share it with you. හරි. දැන් තේරෙනවද මම මොකද්ද මේ කියන්නේ අපි මොන පාරේද යන්නේ කියලා. පළවෙනියෙන්ම අපිට හොඳ අන්ඩර්ස්ටෑන්ඩින් එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. අපි මොකද්ද මේ ටැක්ස් කියලා කරන්නේ. ඒ මුල ඔළුවට හොඳට වැටුනොත් තමයි අපිට ටැක්සේෂන් ලේසි. නැත්තම් හැමෝම කියන්නේ ලෝකයේ තියෙන අප්‍රසන්නම සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක ටැක්ස් කියලා. ඉගෙන ගන්න අමාරුම සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක ටැක්ස් කියලා. එතකොට ඕගොල්ලෝ එහෙම හිතනවද? මම කියන ඒවා තේරෙනවද? identify understanding පහසුද? ඒ ගැන ඔයගොල්ලෝ මට කමෙන්ට් කරන්න. එතකොට මට තවදුරටත් මොනවද කරන්න කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්. In addition to that, you should tell me whether I am too slow or whether I am too speed. ඒක කියන්න මට මම දන්නේ I don't know your knowledge of taxation. So because of that, I am starting from the very basic level. From the bottom. මම පටන් ගන්නෙ පහළම එක්කෙනත් කිසිම කෙනෙක් ටැක්ස් දන්නේ නැහැ කියන තැන ඉඳලා. ඒතර ඔයගොල්ලෝ මට කතා කරලා that is why I asked about a class coordinator. If you have a class coordinator, tell your comments to him or her. If you don't have a class coordinator, please appoint one person as a class coordinator and please give me his or her telephone number, contact number, or convey your message to me through that class coordinator. මට ඒක ගොඩාක් වැදගත්. මොකද අපි දකින්නේ නැහනේ. අපි ෆිසිකලි මේ ක්ලාස් එක කරනවා නම් I can ask, but we are in virtual session, therefore අපිට ඒක හරි අමාරුයිනේ කතා කරන්න. ඒ හින්දා ඔයගොල්ලෝ මට කියන්න මේක අපි කොහොමද කරන්න ඕනේ? ඔයගලන්ට මේ කියන ටික හොඳට තේරෙනවද? අපි තව ස්ලෝ වෙන්න ඕනේද? තව ස්පීඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? ඉක්මනට කරගෙන යමුද? ඔයගලන්ගේ දැනුම අනුව මට please share your feedback. It is very important. Okay. So now you know what are the items that should be included when you are calculating the employment income. හරි. මොනවද මෙතන නැත්තේ? මෙහෙන් බැලුවම අපිට හම්බ වෙන හැමදේම මෙතන තියෙනවනේ. එතකොට සල්ලි වලින් නොලැබෙන සියලුම benefits වල fair market value එකක් ගන්නවා. එහෙමනම් අපිට ආයි අහන්න ඕනේද මගේ? අපි pension එක ගන්නවද? මට මෙහෙම income එකක් ගන්නවා මේ හම්බ වෙනවා මෙහෙම එක ගන්නවද? නෑ නේද? Because each and every income we are receiving from our employer should be included. So that is the first step of calculating employment income. Then what should we do? After that, we should move to subsection 3. Subsection 3 says to exclude some income. In calculating an individual's gains and profits from an employment for a year of assessment, the following shall be excluded. That means, first of all, we collect every income in a basket. After that, we are removing one by one some excluded items. So, what are the items that should be excluded? මොකද ඔයගොල්ලෝ කවුරුවත් මගෙන් ඇහුවේ නෑනේ. අනේ අම්මෝ රස්සාවක් නැති වුණත් හම්බෙන එක ටැක්ස් කරනවද? අනේ අපිට මොනවා හරි වුණත් හම්බෙන එක ටැක්ස් කරනවද කියලා කවුරුත් ඇහුවේ නෑ. මොකද ඔයගලන්ට තාම එච්චර එක කල්පනා වෙන්නේ නැතුව ඇති. නමුත් අපි in the first step we have to collect every income. Then what should we do? Now we are moving to subsection 3. Subsection 3 says the items that should be excluded. First one is exempt amounts and final withholding payments. If there are some exempt amounts, how can we find exempt amounts? Okay, tell me. How can we find? Where you can find exempt amounts? From where you can find exempt amounts? කොහෙන්ද හම්බ වෙන්නේ අපිට? කොහොමද අපි දන්නේ? දැන් මං කියනවනේ exempt amounts අයින් කරන්න කියලා. පළවෙනියෙන් ඔක්කොම එකතු කරගන්නවා. එකතු කරගෙන එක එක අරන් බලනවා. මේක exemptද? මේක අයින් කරනවා. එහෙනම් අපි දැනගන්න ඕනේ we should know what are the exempt items. So how do you determine whether one income is exempt or not? We have a specific schedule. That is Schedule 3. Schedule 3 in the Act. In that Schedule 3, you can find some items that are excluded from income tax. So if some income is excluded under that schedule, you can remove that income under subsection 3 of section 5. Here, section 5, 1, 2, 3. So this is subsection 3 of section 5. So subsection 3 explains what are the items that should be excluded. Okay, we can go one by one. Exempt amounts and final withholding payments. Don't worry about this word final withholding payment. You don't have final withholding payments with regard to employment income. Only you should consider is exempt amounts. මොනවාද exempt amounts කියලා බලන්න ඕනේ. Third schedule එකට ගිහිල්ලා. Then a discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual on behalf of an employer. What is that? What are the income we can reimburse? So, under subsection 2 also, we have that kind of income. Payments providing discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual or an associate of the individual. මොකද්ද මෙතනින් කියන්නේ? මෙතනින් කියන්නේ අපේ වියදම් අපි දරා ගන්නවා. අපේ වියදම අපි දරාගත්තට පස්සේ අපේ එම්ප්ලෝයර් ඒ වියදම අපිට රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. මගේ ගෙදර ටෙලිෆෝන් එකට බිල මෙයා රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. මගේ ගෙදර ගෙවල් කුලිය මෙයා රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. ඇයි ඒ? මගේ ගෙදරට ගෙවල් කුලි ගෙවන්න ඕනේ මට හම්බෙන පඩියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි මෙයා ඒක රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. එහෙනම් මොකක්ද එතන තියෙන්නේ? මට හම්බෙන බෙනිෆිට් එකක්. මම හොඳටම ලෙඩ වෙලා ගිහිල්ලා හොස්පිටලයිස් වෙනවා. හොස්පිටල් බිල් ටික ගිහිල්ලා දුන්නාම එම්ප්ලොයර්ට එම්ප්ලොයර් රීම්බර්ස් කරනවා. මගේ හොස්පිටල් බිල් එක ගෙවන්න ඕනේ මම වුණාට එම්ප්ලොයර් එක ගෙවනවා කියන්නේ මට බෙනිෆිට් එකක්. I receive that benefit because I am an employee of that organization. So that is a benefit of that employment. So we should include that income here. Here, what are the reimbursements? Here, the reimbursements are for the expenses that are incurred by an individual on behalf of that employer. ඒ කියන්නේ employerගේ වියදමක් employee දරනවා. හිතන්නකෝ employer කියන්නේ පුංචි ආයතනයක් කියලා. පොඩි ආයතනයක employer වෙනුවෙන් ඒ කඩේක වැඩ කරනවා කවුරුද එක්කෙනෙක් ඒ කඩේ වැඩ කරනකොට මොන හරි ඩැමේජ් එකක් වෙනවා එයා යගේ අතින් සල්ලි දාලා ඒක හදනවා. හැදුවට පස්සේ මොකද කරන්නේ? That employer will reimburse that amount to that employee. So it is not a benefit. It is not a benefit because that expenditure should be borne by that employer. So employee spend that expenditure. So that reimbursement should be excluded. If we have included some reimbursement like that, that kind of reimbursement should be disregarded, excluded. The next one, a discharge or reimbursement of the person's dental, medical, or health insurance expenses. That means reimbursement can be done by the employer for persons' dental, medical, or health insurance expenses. That means after taking some medicine, we can provide that bills to the employer for the reimbursement and he can pay that amount to us. But we can exclude that amount as an income if that insurance scheme is available to all full-time employees in the same grade of the service on equal terms. That means, suppose there is an organization. In that organization, in the same grade officers, there are some grades, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, like that. For the grade 3, that benefit is available to all full-time employees on equal terms. For A, a special benefit. For B, another benefit. For C, another benefit. No, not like that. For the officers in the same grade, if equal terms are applicable, then that kind of reimbursement for the health or dental medical insurances, that is excluded. ආයතනයේ ඉන්න එක ග්‍රේඩ් එකක ඉන්න හැමෝටම අයිති වෙනවා නම් සමාන වරප්‍රසාද ඒ වගේ වරප්‍රසාද තියෙන එක්කෙනෙකුට ලැබෙන රීම්බර්ස්මන්ට් එක ටැක්ස් කරන්නේ නැහැ. If a special insurance package is applicable for a person, that is not on equal terms. At that time, that income should be categorized, included under employment income. If not, and if it is applicable to same grade, employees in the same grade on equal terms, that is excluded. දැන් ඔයගලගේ ආයතනවල මෙඩිකල් ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ග්‍රේඩ් එකේ ඉන්න ඔක්කොටම මේක තියෙනවා. ඒ ග්‍රේඩ් එකේ ඔක්කොටම තියෙනවා සමාන විදිහට. එහෙනම් ඒ ලැබෙන බෙනිෆිට් එක ටැක්ස් කරන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් මගෙන් අහන්න එපා මෙඩිකල් මේක ලයිබල්ද මේක ගෙවන්න ඕනේද දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ අයිඩෙන්ටිෆයි කරන්න ඕනේ ඒ වගේ ඒවා. The next one, payments made to or benefits accruing to employees on a non-discriminatory basis that by reason of their size, type and frequency are unreasonable or administratively impracticable for the employer to amount for or to allocate to the individual. Tell me one example. Who can tell me an example? මොකද්ද මෙතන කියන්නේ? There is a benefit. It should be not based on their size, type, or frequency. And sometimes if it is not reasonable, or sometimes it is very administratively impracticable for the ascertaining for the benefit of one employee. That kind of income should not be considered, should not be included. For an example, අපේ ආයතනයේ තේ හම්බෙනවනේ අපිට ප්‍රැක්ටිකල් දෙයක. එක එක්කෙනාගේ තේ එක හදලා තේ එකේ වටිනාකමට අපේ ආර්ද රුපියල් 100යි අද බිව්ව තේකට. රුපියල් 100ක් එකතු කරනවා මෙයාගේ ඉන්කම් එකට. බෙනිෆිට් එකක්. වගේ ගන්න එක. No, it is not reasonable. What else? තව මොන වගේද? You are giving group transport. You are giving group transport. That is also a benefit. Because traveling and transport should be provided by yourself for your employment service, to provide the employment service. You should provide yourself. You should අපි අපේ දේ කරගන්න ඕනේ. අපි යන වාහනේ අපි හොයා ගන්න ඕනේ. But sometimes our organization give us that benefit. They are giving us a group transportation. Can we ascertain one employee's benefit for that group transportation? එක්කෙනෙක් නගිනවා ඔක්කොමලා නගිනවා ඔෆිස් එක ළඟින්. එක්කෙනෙක් බහිනවා හැව්ලොක් ටවුන්, අනිත් එක්කෙනා බහිනවා කොහොවලින්, අනිත් එක්කෙනා බහිනවා බොඩ්ලස්ගමුවෙන්, තව එක්කෙනෙක් යනවා පිළියන්දලට, තව එක්කෙනෙක් යනවා බණ්ඩාරගමට. අපි කොහොමද මේක බෙදන්නේ? Is it a practical thing? It is administratively impractical. මෙයාගේ benefit එක කීයද? මෙයාගේ benefit එක කීයද? No, it is not practical. But if you have given one vehicle to yourself, then we can ascertain the liability. So that kind of things should be categorized under H. We call it fair market value of that benefit should be ascertained, because that benefit is given only to you. It is an easy thing to calculate the fair market value of that benefit. So you can include, you should include that income. But if you have given a group transportation, it is administratively impracticable to ascertain each employee's benefit. So because of that, that kind of things are not included. After including, we have to exclude that income. ඔය වගේ තව තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර income එකක් අරගෙන මේක දාලා බලන්න. මේක administratively ascertain කළ හැකිද? Practicalද? Reasonableද? After that, you can determine whether it should be a part of the income or not. Then, the value of a right or option to acquire shares at the time granted to an employee under an employee share scheme referred to in paragraph J of subsection 2. That means under subsection 2J, it says the market value of shares at the time of allotment under the employee share scheme. So, when allotting under the share scheme, including shares allotted as a result of the exercise of an employee option or right to acquire the shares, reduced by the employee's contribution for the share. So it is a thing that if we have given a share option facility, at the time of giving that option, here, the value of right or option to acquire shares at the time granted to an employee under the employee share scheme. මොකද්ද මේකෙන් කියන්නේ? අපිට share option එකක් දෙනවා. මට කියනවා මම ඔයාලට මේ share එක මේ ගානට දෙනවා. දෙන අවස්ථාව එකක්. මම ඒක ඒ වෙලේ ගන්නෑ. මම ටික දවසක් ගිහිල්ලා option එක ගන්නවා, acquire කරනවා. At that time, we have to consider it under income. But at the time of giving that option, it should not be taken for the employment income. Option එක දෙන වෙලාවෙ නෙවෙයි ගන්න කියන්නේ. Option එක exercise කරන වෙලාවෙදි ගන්න කියලා කියනවා. Ma'am, why staff welfare add back to corporate tax calculation and need to add personal tax calculation of employees? Refreshment, expenses, sugar, purchases, etc. No, we have not told, ask you to add back it. Under staff welfare, if you are providing tea, so it should not be added back because it is impractical to ascertain each one's tax liability. In the normal course, we say if we are giving some welfare, if that benefit is calculated under employee's income tax liability, then only we can give that expenditure under company. ඒ කියන්නේ company එකේ වියදමක් විදිහට අඩු කරන්න දෙන්නේ ඒ දරන වියදම personal tax එකට ඒ වියදම ලබන්නා personal tax එකට ඒක පෙන්නවා නම් විතරයි කියනවා. That is why we are checking whether that income is categorized under personal tax or not. So, you are not considering that under personal tax, මං ඒකයි කිව්වේ. මේ තේ එකක් දෙන එක. අපිට පුළුවන් ද පුද්ගලයාගේ එක වෙන් කරලා මෙයාට තේ මෙච්චර දුන්නා කියලා කැල්කියුලේට් කරලා ඉන්කම් එකට ගන්න. ඒක practicalද? It is not practical. It is not reasonable. So, you are not taking it under personal income tax of an individual because it is not impractical, not practical. එහෙම නැතිව ප්‍රැක්ටිකල් වෙලා නොගෙන හිටියා නම් මේ ඩිස්අලව් කරන එක හරි. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ තේ බොන්නවා කියන ඒවා වගේ දේවල් ඉන්කම් ටැක්ස් වලින් අඩු කරන්න ඒක අඩු කරන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. මම දන්නේ එහෙම කිව්වද කියලා. It is not practical. Then the next one, subject to conditions as may be specified by the Commissioner General, contributions made by an employer to an employee's account with the pension, provident, gratuity, savings fund or savings society approved by the Commissioner General. That means subject to condition. That means there are some conditions. Here contributions made by an employer to a fund. එතකොට මෙන්න මේක හොඳට තේරුම් ගන්න. අපි pension එකක් දෙන්නේ, we are not giving a pension directly at the time of making that payment. That means we are first of all, we are contributing to a pension fund. So from the beginning of from the recruitment of that employment, they are contributing some amount to the contribution fund, that the pension fund. After some period, after taking pension, they will pay pension from that fund. එහෙම නේද වෙන්නේ? අපි ආයතනයකට බැඳුණු දවසේ ඉඳලා අපේ පඩියෙන් කොටසක් කපලා සමහර වෙලාවට පෙන්ෂන් ෆන්ඩ් එකට යනවා. එතකොට අපෙන් කොටසක් යනවා එම්ප්ලොයී කොටසක් දාලා පෙන්ෂන් ෆන්ඩ් එක හදනවා. ඒතර මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ අන්නේ හදන කන්ට්‍රිබියුෂන් එක ගැන. ඊට පස්සේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? ඊට පස්සේ මේ කන්ට්‍රිබියුෂන් එක අපි පෙන්ෂන් ගියාට පස්සේ මේ ෆන්ඩ් එකෙන් තමයි අපිට ඊළඟට පෙන්ෂන් ගෙවන්නේ. එතකොට අපි කන්ට්‍රිබියුට් කරන වෙලාවෙ එකපාරක් ටැක්ස් කරලා මේ ෆන්ඩ් එක හදලා මේ ෆන්ඩ් එකෙන් ආයිමත් පෙන්ෂන් එක ගෙවනකොටත් ටැක්ස් කරොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? double tax. Because of that, we are excluding some part. We can tax it at once, but several times we cannot tax. Double taxation should not be happen. So here we have to exclude some contributions made by an employer to an employee's account with the pension. So pension provident or gratuity fund. If that is a contribution at that time, that should be excluded. එතකොට මේවා කැලි වෙන් කරගන්න. First of all, we are contributing to a fund. So here we are considering employees part. මොකද employer part එක මෙතන සලකන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක අපි gross salary ගන්නකොට මේක අරගෙන ඉවරයි. So employees part. මොකද employee ත අපි වෙනින් කොටසක් දෙනවනේ. That is for ourselves. So that part is excluded at the time of contributing to a fund, not at the time of making payment to the pensioner. එතකොට මේක කරන්නේ ෆන්ඩ් එකට දානවා. ෆන්ඩ් එකෙන් දෙන එක තමයි අනිත් එක. So when we are contributing to a fund, that amount should be excluded. මේකේ අනිත් part එක අපි කතා කරනවා exemptions යටතේ. Then the next one, any retirement payment received at the time of retirement from employment subject to the condition that the respective retirement contributions have already been considered for income tax purposes and the employee has paid tax on such contributions in a previous year of assessment. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ වගේ contribution එක කරලා අපි payment එකක් කරන අවස්ථාවේදී exempt වෙනවා. එතකොට සමහර ඒවා තියෙනවා here that fund should be approved by the Commissioner General. If that contribution is made to a fund approved by the Commissioner General, at that time only this exclusion is applicable. There are some funds that are not approved by the Commissioner General. So the same rationale is there. If that fund is not approved by the Commissioner General, that also should be taxed only at once. Sometimes making a contribution to a fund, and after that contribution, from that contribution, payment will be made. So if that is not subject to, if that fund is not approved by the Commissioner General, then we will have another issue. So this last one is for the for funds that are not approved by the Commissioner General. So I have explained employment income under section 5. So section 5 is for the employment income. Section 5 subsection 1 is for the interpretation in introduction of the section. Section 2 is for the items that should be included. Subsection 3 is for the items that should be excluded. Under excluded, we should know what are the items that should be exempted. So I will just show you that schedule 3, but it is difficult to identify the exempt amounts in that schedule because it has not specifically mentioned whether that income is relevant for which source. So it is difficult, but when you are reading that subsection, schedule 3, when you are going through that document, then you can understand what are the items excluded under employment income. Here, this is the exempt schedule. It says, the following shall be exempt amounts derived by. So these exemptions are applicable for an institution. Exemptions can be considered under two parts. That is, A is for the items for the institutions. First part is for the exemptions for institutions. Then after that, from B to the end, there are a lot of exemptions. Here you can see lot of exemptions. For these exemptions are applicable for not only for employment, but for business, investment, and other sources. So you can see all exemptions are in Schedule 3. So you have to specifically identify the relevant source. Therefore, you should read one by one to check whether that is exempt or not. What is this? Okay. These are the institutions. So we call it exempt institutions. For an example, government organization, local authority, including government department. So there are some government departments, they are collecting revenue, but that revenue is not subject to income tax because that government department is tax exempt. Amounts derived by means every income received by this kind of organization is exempt. රජයේ ආයතන විතරයි. රජයේ ආයතන government department එකක්, ministry එකක්, ආදායමක් උපයනවා නම් any amount here, amounts derived, any income is exempt. Then central bank, including monetary board, that is also exempt. Universities. හැබැයි university exempt කර university එකේ ඉන්න lecturers ලා exempt වෙනවද? No. University itself exempt. University එකක් income generate කරනවා නම් that income is exempt. Which income? Business, investment, any income is exempt. Then schools. Then cooperative societies. Then diplomatic institutions. Then other institutional organizations. Those are exempt. එතකොට ඒ ආයතනයම exempt. So from B, special exemptions are provided for each source, but source is not specifically mentioned. But when we are reading that exemption part, we can identify whether that expenditure, that exemption is available for an employment or business or investment. Let's read first one. Capital sums paid to a person as compensation or a gratuity in relation to personal injuries suffered by the person or the death of another person. හරි. මෙතන කියනවනේ gratuity එකක් ගෙවනවා කියලා. gratuity ගෙවන්නේ කාටද? compensation එකක්, gratuity එකක්, employment එකක්ද? එහෙමනම් ඔන්න B කියන එක employment එකට exemption එකක් කියන්න පුළුවන්. The next one, the pension. Pension of a person paid by the government of Sri Lanka or department of the government of Sri Lanka. Then, now you know the government pension. So, to whom that pension applicable? For an employee. Therefore, C is also applicable, relevant for employment income. Then D, this is also for employment income. Here, employee at the time of retirement. So, when we are contributing by employer to the fund, At that time, that is excluded. I told you, I explained you two transactions with regard to this contribution and payment. That means when the employer contributing to a fund, at that time that is excluded. Then the next transaction is from the fund making the payment to pensioner. So at that time that is exempt. But that exemption is available only if that is approved by the Commissioner General or a regulated provident fund. There are a lot of provident funds. If that fund is approved by the Commissioner General Law, if it is a regulated provident fund, then the income received from that provident fund is exempt. Then E is for the diplomatic employees. That is also exempt. Then F is not applicable for employment. Then G is not applicable for employee. So likewise, we can identify the relevant exemptions for the employment income. Okay. I have given that in my presentation slides, so I think you can understand and you can read carefully. So let's move to the presentation now. Yes, now we are in the presentation slide. Okay, so I have explained every gains and profits under section 5.2. මම ඔයගලන්ට slides වලින් කතා කරන්නේ නැතුව act එකෙන්ම පෙන්නුවේ. ඒක තියෙන විදිය පෙන්නන්න. Then it is for you it is easy to read and understand the provisions of the act. Then all these items are available in the act. Here I have given you an example. You can read it. This example is provided in the presentation slide. Then here also I have given you an example for compensation and loss of employment. Here I have given you an example. Mr. Saman currently works in a government institution in Kandy. He has been offered a position at the company in Colombo. So this is the condition. Here, මතකයි තියෙන්නේ මම අර කිව්වා condition එකකට එන්න යනවා නම් කියලා. ඒ condition එක ගැන තමයි මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. එයාට අපි කියනවා අපි වට මෙච්චර ගාණක් දෙන්න ඔය රස්සාවත් ඇරලා මං ගාවට එන්නකෝ කියලා කියන්නේ අන්න ඒ වගේ දේවල් තමයි මේ. Then the fair market value, I have to explain this one. For the associate persons, associate person is defined under section 196 of the Act. You can read it. Mainly associate means for an individual, father, mother, children, spouse, they are individuals, associates. Then I have explained everything. Discharge or reimbursement. For this discharge or reimbursement, we have already issued a public ruling because earlier we haven't had this kind of explanation. So we had an issue. මොකද මේක කතන්දරයක් විදිහට කිව්වොත් එහෙම ඉස්සර මෙතන තිබුණේ මේ same grade කියන වචන කලින් තිබුණ නැහැ. එතකොට මේ පනත ආපු කාලේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආවා. කිසිම ආයතනයක ඉන්න සියලුම දෙනාට සමාන මෙඩිකල් ස්කීම් නැහැ කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ grade එකෙන් grade එකට මේක වෙනස් කියලා. සමාන එකක් තියෙනවා කිව්වනම් ආයතනයක ඉන්න පහළම නිලධාරියාගේ ඉඳලා උඩම ඉන්න එක්කෙනාටත් තියෙන්න ඕන එකම benefit එක. But in corporate world it cannot be happen because for each grade each separate terms are there. So because of that they requested to amend the act So after that, we amended the act and we have already issued a public ruling allowing discharge or reimbursement of the person's dental or medical expenses and discharge or reimbursement of the person's health insurance expenses subject to other conditions. So this is the public ruling. It is available in the IRD website. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ පුංචි amendments ටික කරේ. We have made that amendment for the applicable easiness of the applicability of this provision. Apply කරන්න බැරි විදිහේ provisions තිබිලා වැඩක් නැහැනේ. Therefore we amended it. So I have explained this one. Then employee shares. So at the time of allotment, we do not consider it for the income. Allotment and the exercising of that allotment is two different things. We are giving option as an employer, but at the same time, you are not accepting it. You will accept it later. So when I am offering, it should not be considered as an income. But when you are accepting it, at that time, it will be a benefit to you. මම ඔයාට ඔෆර් එකක් ගන්න කියලා කියනවා. මම කියනවා මම ඔයාට දෙන්නම් මේක ගන්න කියලා. හැබැයි ඔයා ඒ වෙලේ ඒක ගන්නෙ නැහැ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඒක ගන්නෙ කාලයක් ගිහිල්ලා. සමහරවිට මේ අවුරුද්දේ කියනවා ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දේ ගන්නෙ. Because of that, at the time of granting that option, we should not consider for the benefit. But when you are exercising it, at that time, you should take that opportunity. එතකොට උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් මම කියනවා මගේ කොටස් ටික ඔයාට ගන්න කියලා අඩු ගානකට. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කොටසක මිල 10යි කියනවා මම කියන 5ට ගන්න කියනවා. එතකොට 5ක් සල්ලි දීලා ගන්නවා. එතකොට අන්නේ 5 තමයි benefit එක වෙන්නේ. හැබැයි benefit එක we consider that benefit when you are purchasing that shares, not the time I am offering it. So that is the two different situations. Then these are the exemptions. I have given it under my presentation slide. So for you easy reference, compensation, pension. Then the last one is benefits derived by a government employee for road vehicle permit. What is the road vehicle permit? For government officials, there is a vehicle permit. So that vehicle benefit permit is also a part of the benefit received from the employment. So it is also exempt. Then what are the provisions related to employment income? First one is no deductions shall be allowed to deduct. Deductions are not allowable. The basis of accounting is cash basis. So these are the main thing you have to consider when we are calculating assessable income from employment. So the next thing is the source rule. Source rule means what is the source? Source rule means the place we are receiving it. Actually, income, employment income can be categorized in several ways. That means we can give our employment within Sri Lanka, or sometimes we can give our employment via in Sri Lanka, but we will give service to a person in another country. So at that time, we should consider which place that we should consider as an employment. So for the source rule, payments received in respect of employment shall have a source in Sri Lanka. That means if we are receiving some payment and if we should consider it as our employment, that source should be in Sri Lanka. What is the source? To the extent derived in respect of employment in Sri Lanka, wherever paid. That means we are giving employment in Sri Lanka, but my salary is paid by another person in another country. මම ලංකාවේ ඉඳලා තමයි මගේ කම්පැනි එකට සර්විය දෙන්නේ. මට පඩි ගෙවන්නේ එංගලන්තේ කම්පැනි එකක්. But I am giving my employment to a company in Sri Lanka. So at that time, my employment has a source in Sri Lanka. That means I should pay taxes according to the Sri Lanka law. The second one, if paid by or on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, wherever the employment is. ඒ මොකක්ද කියන්නේ? අපේ රටේ තානාපති කාර්ය ඕන තරම් තියෙනවනේ. දැන් මෙයා ඉන්නවා එංගලන්තේ. එංගලන්තේ ඉන්න කෙනාට අපි පඩිය ගෙවන්නේ මෙහෙන්නේ. එතකොට එයා ලෝකේ කොහේ හිටියත් කමක් නැහැ. But he is a government servant. So at that time we are paying salary. So even though that person is giving his employment in another country, he is in another country, we do not consider it. We consider the payment. So the government pay that salary. So that person's employment source is within Sri Lanka. The next one, to the extent derived from a company resident and conducting the business in Sri Lanka. So if there's a company in Sri Lanka and in the Sri Lankan company, resident company, conducting the business in Sri Lanka, so that employment is giving to a company resident in Sri Lanka. So at that time, that employment we considered as a source, has a source in Sri Lanka. So this is how we consider whether the employment has a source in Sri Lanka or not. Okay. Let's have a 10 minutes break. After that, we will start advanced personal income tax, because it is also very important to you. Now you know what is the employment income. So you should know how to calculate advanced personal income tax. So it is not your duty. If you are an employee, your employer, your accountant will calculate advanced personal income tax on behalf of you. But if you are an accountant, or if you are engaging in the accounts division, and if you are calculating the tax liability of your organization, employees of the organization, you should know how to apply the relevant tables. So we will start that after 10 minutes break. So that means we can start after 10 minutes. I will give you a break. Okay, we can start. So now I am moving to advanced personal income tax calculation. So what is the meaning of advanced personal income tax, and who should do it? Who should do it? When we are calculating our tax liability, do we need to do it like this? Or who should do this calculation? In our organization, our accountant or any person who is calculating, who is deducting APIT or payee or salary deduction, that person should know these things. එතකොට මේ අපි හැමෝම දැනගන්න ඕන දෙයක් උත් නෙවෙයි ඇත්තටම මේක. Because for my salary, when I am receiving my salary, my accountant in my organization should deduct taxes on behalf of me. We call it advanced personal income tax. So it is a kind of advance tax payment by me, but it is not done by me. It is done by the accountant on behalf of me. So when I am calculating my tax liability, then it is an easy thing because I should consider only about myself. But for an accountant, when he is calculating employee's tax liability, it is very difficult thing because there are a lot of employees in that organization. So because of that, we have calculated a tax liability and we have published a booklet. It actually earlier we printed it and shared it with the employer, but now we are not printed it. It has already been published in our website. So you can see that calculation in the website. So personal deduction of advanced personal income tax or APIT, earlier we used the term payee. That is an obligation of the employer. So employer should deduct APIT from our salary or our employment payment. So for that employer, it is not necessary to get our consent for that deduction. මම කිව්වොත් විතරක් නෙවෙයි ආඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. මගේ කැමැත්ත ඇතුව නෙවෙයි ආඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. Whether I like it or not, when I am receiving my salary, that employer should deduct APIT part from that salary. That is his obligation. He should do it, not me. He should do it. He should deduct it on behalf of me, and he should, after deduction of that tax, he should pay it to the department. So every month they should deduct our EPIT portion, and the deducted amount should be paid to the department in the next month. But after 1 year, that means 1 year means after year of assessment, that means from for the deduction from April to March, they should prepare schedule. In that schedule, they should enter every taxpayer's, every employee's details in the schedule with their TIN number, their NIC number. They have to mention what is the amount they have deducted from us. So we call them a schedule. With that schedule, they should submit a return to the department. That return includes that specific schedules, separately mentioning each employee's details. Through that schedule, we can very easily identify the specific deduction of each and every individual taxpayer or employee. Using that amount, we have already prepared our simplified income tax return. So you have to submit personal income tax return no before 30th of November 2025 for the year of assessment 24-25. So, normally we have very long, very big return, including every details. But there are some taxpayers, they have only employment income and investment income, like us. That means we are employee. So for that employee, we don't have business income. Because of that, our income tax status is very simple. So because of that, the department has already prepared a simplified income tax return. In that simplified income tax return, we have included our employment details, our bank details and everything. It has already been populated in the simplified VAT return using these data. So we are receiving tax deducted details from the employer through their employment withholding EPIT return. So using that return, we have identified relevant data for each employee. That data is populated in the simplified tax return. If you have that tax return, you can go through that tax return. You can identify most of the income means employment income and investment income, are already pre-filled. So using this document, using the return of this employer, EPIT return, we have extracted that data. So for the deduction of this EPIT, we have a specific section, that is section 83A. So I think you can understand this capital A is there. That means this is a amended provision. Amended provision means newly inserted provision. So in the Principal Act, we had section 83. That section 83 was mentioned as withholding tax on employment. Withholding tax on employment is section 83. It was available in the Principal Act. After that, the provision was amended. Provision was amended. Then now we have section 83A. So with effect from 2023, we have section to 83A, not the 83. So since we don't have much time to explain every provision in that, I'm not going to explain it now. But if you need some knowledge about the previous thing, you can ask any question. But now I am doing it from the latest amendment because that is applicable for your calculation, because we are going to calculate 25-26 tax calculation. So for that purpose, it is more than enough for you to know about the recent amendment, that is 2023 amendment. In that amendment, 2022 amendment, in that amendment, this has mentioned. So in the 2021 amendment, 83A was introduced, but after that, from 22 amendment, it was again amended. So after that, now it is an obligation of the employer to deduct withholding tax or EPIT when they are making the payment. So in the employment, we can divide that employment into two, that is primary employment and secondary employment. What is the meaning of primary employment and what is the meaning of secondary employment? Primary employment is an employment that we have our main one. Sometimes it can be male, sometimes it can be not the first one. That means we may have only one employment or several employments. If we have more than one employment, at that time, we have to consider one employment as a primary employment. It depends on the employee. The department officials are not going to tell you anything about the primary or secondary employment. It is not the official's duty. So you should determine what is your primary employment and what is your secondary employment. It depends on your understanding. So if you have more than one employment, only one can be selected as primary employment. So you should given a declaration to the employer saying that this is my primary employment. It is a must. Then only employer knows that this is your primary employment. Why should we tell it to him? What is the main reason? ඇයි අපි කියන්න ඕනේ යාට? මට තියෙනවා employment ගොඩක්. එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? එක්කෙනෙකුට එකකට වඩා ගොඩක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? තිපුළුවන්නේ. සමහර වෙලාවට මම එක තැනක රස්සාව කරනවා. මම තව තැනක රස්සාව කරනවා. ඒතර ලේසියෙන් ගවර්න්මන්ට් ඔෆිසර්ස්ලාට එහෙම තැන් තැන්වල රස්සාවල් කරන්න බෑ. එතකොට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ගවර්න්මන්ට් ඔෆිසර් කෙනෙකුට රස්සාව කරන ගමන් තව තැනක ස්ටැටුටරි බොඩි එකක ඩිරෙක්ටර් පෝස්ට් එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒක යාගේ සෙකන්ඩරි එක. එතකොට ඩිරෙක්ටර් පෝස්ට් එක තැනක නෙවෙයි ගොඩක කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට යාට සෙකන්ඩරි ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට අපිට ඒ වගේ for a person, for an individual, there may be lot of employments. If we have more than one employment should be identified as a primary employment. All other employments are secondary employments. So there may be lot of secondary employments. If we have more than one employment, that is a primary, so we should give a declaration to the employer saying that this is my primary employment. So what is the purpose of giving that primary declaration? Because when we are applying a table, at that time, for the primary employment, we will grant that personal relief. Personal relief means for the year of assessment 25, for the year of assessment 25-26, personal relief is 1.8 million. So we can give it only once per year for year of assessment. So if we have more than one employment, if we are not going to tell it to my employer, they may not know whether you have one employment or more than one employment. At that time, without knowing that, they may apply the same table for the deduction of advanced personal income tax. So that is why you should tell your employer with regard to the primary employment. Then for the secondary employment, also, you should tell your employer that this is not your primary employment. So that is also should be told. So this is the web page for the APIT table. So APIT tables means since the employer should calculate lot of taxpayers' tax liability, because when we are calculating our tax liability, it may be only myself or and my husband's tax liability. We have only one or two tax computations. But for the employer, there are a lot of employees to be calculated their tax liabilities. So he cannot calculate one by one. Because of that, the department has calculated a tax table, prepared tax table, EPIT tables. So based on that EPIT table, the employer can deduct tax liability of the employee. It is like our logbook. I think මතකයිනේ පුංචි කාලේ ඉස්කෝලේ යනකොට අපිට ලඝු පොතක් තිබ්බා. මේ ලඝු පොතේ තියෙන ඉලක්කම් ගොඩාරියක් තියෙන මේකට කියලා අන්න ඒ වගේ එකක් තමයි මේ tax table එක කියන්නේ. එතකොට tax table 1 වල තියෙන ඒ වගේ. So you can go to this website to that tax table. You can find it. I have already shared some circulars and everything, but these tables are not shared with that. So you can go to the EPIT table through the website under publication. So click that publication. There's a drop box. In that drop box, you can see EPIT tables. In the EPIT table here, it is for 23, 24 in this screen, but you can find 25 EPIT table relevant for 25, 26 because now you are in that year of assessment. So for the calculation of deduction of EPIT, you should use that EPIT table. So in that EPIT table, I think you can see table 1, table 2, table 3 like that. For the year of assessment 25, 26, there are 8 tables. Up to 23, 24, 25, we had only 7 tables. But from 25, 26 year of assessment, we have 8 tables. So you can go through that document. You can see what are the table, how do you apply, how to apply table 1 to 8. So these are the tables. Table 1 for regular profit from income. Regular profit means for the primary employment, in the normal course, for the primary employment, we are applying table 1. Table 1 for regular profits. I will explain what are the regular profits later. Then table 2 for lump sum payments. I will explain it later. I will explain these tables later. This is just a reminder. So table 3. Table 3 is for the deduction of tax from once and for all payment. That means for terminal benefits. Terminal benefits. Lump sum payment means we are receiving a lump sum amount at once. For an example, bonus. For a specific period, we are receiving bonus. That is a lump sum payment. Sometimes we are receiving salary arrears. It is for a specific period, but we are receiving it at once. So we call it lump sum payments. So regular profits means amounts we are receiving time to time, monthly, regularly. The amount, salary, OT, allowances, we are receiving regularly. So for that kind of income, we should apply table 1. For lump sum payments, that means for salary arrears or bonus, calculation of EPIT for salary arrears or bonus, we should apply table 2. For terminal benefits means when we are losing our business employment, when we are terminating our employment, at that time we are receiving some terminal benefits. Gratuity, what is that? Pension, commuted pension. So we are receiving that kind of income at the time of retirement. So we are call it terminal benefits. For the calculation of tax liability for a terminal benefits, we should use table 3. Then table 4 is for the calculation of non-resident, non-citizens tax liability. That means non-resident, non-citizen employees tax liability. Then tax table 5 is for cumulative profit from the primary employment. Cumulative profits means sometimes when we are starting from a month, that month is not taxable, but after several months, our tax threshold will increase. Then we should apply the tax rates. We should start the deduction of tax liability. At that time, we should apply table 5. Then table 6 is for tax on tax rates. Table 7 is for secondary employment. That means for the primary employment, we are using table 1. If we have more than one employment, then we should select one employment as a primary employment. For the calculation of tax liability of that primary employment, we should apply table 1. For all other secondary employments, we should apply table 7. Then table 8 is for the employment income received from foreign employer. That means sometimes we are receiving salary from foreign employer. In the normal course, we are receiving salary from our local employer. At that time, that person has an obligation to deduct tax liability. But if we are receiving salary from a foreign employer, can we ask that person to deduct tax liability of our employee? No, we can't, because that person has no obligation to deduct tax liability under our tax. අපේ රටේ තියෙන බදු පනතට අනුව වැඩ කරන්න කියලා අපිට පුළුවන් ද පිට රටක ඉන්න එම්ප්ලොයි කෙනෙක්ට කියන්න. අපිට බෑනේ කියලා කියන්න. ඔය අපේ රටේ කෙනෙක්ට ටැක්ස් ගෙවනවා නම් අපේ රටේ විදිහට බදු ගෙවන්න කියලා. We can't tell it. So because of that, we have introduced special table, that is table 8. Using that table 8, we can calculate that kind of employee's tax liability. Okay. We can move from one by one for the understanding of these tables. I have not shared that one. You can go to the website. In the website, under the publication window, there is a drop box. Here you can see APIT tables. So click that APIT table, then you can appear this kind of table. So click one by one, then you can understand what it says. Then what are the obligation of an employer and employee? Employer should deduct APIT from the employee, and payment should be made not later than 15 days of the following month. Suppose tax deducted for the month of April, in the month of May, before 15th, that payment should be paid to that deducted amount should be paid to the department. Not only that, employer has an obligation to furnish annual statement with schedules. In this schedule, they have to mention all employees' details. In the same schedule, they have to mention the amount of tax deducted. That annual statement should be submitted to the department on or before 30th of April. Then the tax deducted certificate, T10. So one of the students asked about this tax certificate. So this is the tax certificate. We call it T10. Normally not later than 30th April or where an employment ceases during the year of the assessment, or not more than 30 days from the date of cease. That deduction, tax certificate, T10 certificate should be given to the employee. That means up to March 31st, they are making payments to the employee. And when they are making payment to the employee, they should deduct taxes. The details of that deductions should be given to the employee before 30th of April, and the details should be provided in that document. We call it T10. So these are the main documents. These are the main things should be done. So this schedule 1 and schedule 2 should be submitted. Then required to retain documents for a period of 5 years. That means after deduction of these taxes, that document should be kept in the organization for 5 years period. So these are the obligations of employer and employee. So you can find out that primary employment declaration and secondary employment declaration and the certificate of income tax deduction T10 form from the website. You can go to the downloads. This is the website of the department. You can go to the downloads. In that download, you can see forms and return. In the forms and return, you can see advanced personal income tax. In the beginning of that wording, you can see the plus mark. Just click that plus mark. Then you can see primary employment declaration, secondary employment declaration, and the T10 form. So you can download them from the website. So as a withholding agent, as an agent of the government, the employer should deduct taxes from the employee. That is a must. It should be done by the employer. If that employer is not deducted that amount, the employee cannot say, it is not my obligation, it is my employer's obligation. If he has not deducted, it is not my duty. You cannot say like that. If he is not deducted, the definitely employee should pay taxes according to the provisions of that. එතකොට employer අඩු කරේ නෑ මට මොකෝ මගේ වැඩක් නෙවෙයිනි කියලා සද්ද නැතුව ඉන්න බෑ. Here it says the withholdee shall be jointly and severally liable with the withholding agent. Withholding agent means employer. Withholdee means employee. මේ අඩු කරේ නෑ කියලා කටවහගෙන සද්ද නැතුව ඉන්න බෑ. එයා ඒක අඩු කරන්න ඕන. එතකොට මෙයා අඩු කරලා නැත්තම් අපි දන්නවා එයා අඩු කරලා නැහැ කියලා අපි අතට පඩි එනකොට අපි දන්නවනේ ගිය සැරේට වඩා වැඩි පඩියක් එනකොට ආනේ ටැක්ස් අඩු කරලා නැහැ. එහෙනම් අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? එයා අඩු කරලා නැත්තම් ඉක්මනට මේක අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. Okay. So those are the main things that employer should do. Then we have one more important thing with regard to the employment income. That is non-cash benefit. What are the non-cash benefits? What are the non-cash benefits? Non-cash benefits. මොනවද මේ non-cash benefits කියන්නේ? Let's go to the previous slide. Here it says the fair market value of benefits received or derived by virtue of the employment by an individual or an associate. එතන මොකද්ද මෙතන කියන්නේ? If we are receiving any benefit, fair market value of that benefit should be considered as a profit or gain or from the employment. That means we are not receiving that benefit in cash, but we are receiving something. So the fair market value of that benefit should be considered. Yes, office vehicle, using office vehicle. So office vehicle means if there is office vehicle and if that vehicle is used by the officers in the organization, it is not a benefit. But if that vehicle is allocated to us, then it will be a benefit. දැන් ඔෆිස් එකේ ඕන තරම් තියෙනවනේ වාහන. මේ ඔෆිස් එකේ තියෙන වාහනයක අපි ගමන් බිමන් ගියා කියලා ඒක අපේ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. But if that vehicle is allocated to the name of that officer, then that is a benefit. So that officer can come to the office with on that vehicle, can go and come. Then that vehicle is with that officer's house. He can use that vehicle for the private use, not only official use and private use. He can use that vehicle. At that time, it is a non-cash benefit. And a house. Sometimes they are providing housing benefit, house to an employee. So that is also a benefit. That is a non-cash benefit. So there are some cash benefits and there are some non-cash benefits. So for the calculation of non-cash benefits, we have given a special circular because we don't know how to ascertain the liability, how to ascertain the benefit. So because of that, the Act provides authority to the Commissioner General to ascertain the value of that non-cash benefit. So we are calling it quantification of certain amounts. That is a quantification of certain amounts. I have already shared this document with you. You can see it in my share folder in LMS. So it has already circulated. So this is the circular SCC Secretariat SCC 2023. This is E for English 2. This is the date. So from 2023, this is the applicable schedule, applicable circular. It says value of company shares awarded by employer as explained earlier. So yeah. No, we have to go to that document. In that document, it says company shares awarded by employer. So that means in the Act says it. Act says if a company owner share allocate award shares, when allocating it, it is not taxable. But when we are accepting it at that time, we have to consider that the price is already there. So that is why we have not mentioned it here. Then the resident benefit. Value of benefit from any residence provided by the employer. So sometimes we are receiving a resident. ගෙයක් හම්බ වෙනවනේ අපිට. එතකොට මේ ගෙදර අපි කොහොමද වැලියු කරන්නේ? අපිට තියෙන්න ඕනේ වැලියු එක. අපිට ගෙයක් දෙනවා. මේ ගෙදර අපි කොහොමද වැලියු කරන්නේ? We have to consider whether the resident is provided with furnished or unfurnished, but is provided by the employer. ඇයි මේ furnished unfurnished කියලා විශේෂයෙන් ලියලා තියෙන්නේ? මේ circular එක එන්න කලින් තිබෙන circulars වල furnished නම් මේ ගාන, unfurnished නම් මේ ගාන, rated area නම් මේ ගාන, unrated area නම් මේ ගාන කියලා ලොකු කතන්දර ගොඩක් තිබුණා. මේක හරි simplify කරලා තියෙන්නේ දැන් එකයි. ඒතකොට අර ඒක තමයි වෙනස. නැත්තම් පරණ ඒවා ගැන දන්න අයට මේක issue එකක් එනවා. Why it is not categorized? That is why it has given furnished and unfurnished. So after that, we have to consider whether that residence is in rated area or not. In rated area where the rates are collected by local authority. අපි මොනවද ওই වරිපණම් ගන්නෙ? අන්න ඒ වගේ මේ රේට් එක එකතු කරන තැනක්ද? නැත්නම් not corrected පැත්තක්ද? state bungalow එකක්ද? So after that we have given a criteria that is 12.5% of salary of the respective employee for the relevant month. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපේ සැලරි එකෙන් 12%ක් ගන්න කියනවා අපේ මාසික ගෙදර මාසික කුලිය විදියට. එතකොට අපිට ගෙයක් දුන්නට ගෙදරට අපි කුලියක් නොගෙව්වට අපිට දෙන බෙනිෆිට් එක අපි අගය කරනවා මේ විදියට. 12.5% of the salary should be considered as a benefit for a month. If we are when we are calculating for a year of assessment, so we have to multiply this amount by 12 to calculate the annual benefit. Then if it is an unrated area, 10% of the salary. If it is an estate bungalow, 7.5% of the salary. So what is the salary? Salary means the amount required to be considered for the deduction of WNOP or Provident Fund. That means in the normal course, that is basic salary. For other cases, salary means gains and profit from employment received in cash to such employee from relevant employer. That means for sometimes WNOP or Provident Funds are not applicable. At that time, the amount received as in cash should be considered. To that salary, we have to apply 12.5% or 10% or 7.5% for the calculation of the housing benefit per month. Sometimes the calculated amount is higher than the actual amount. So at that time, the lesser amount should be considered as a benefit. So this is the way of calculating housing benefit. මේවා ගැන හොඳට බලා ගන්න වෙනවා. මේවා විභාගෙට එනවා. Calculate කරන්න. When you are calculating an individual's income tax liability, we will give you cash benefits and non-cash benefits. So if we are giving non-cash benefits, at that time you should calculate the benefit of that housing benefit and vehicle benefit. So for that purpose, you should have better knowledge about this circular. Then we are moving to the next slide. It says value of benefits from any residence provided by the employer. Sometimes we are giving a house to an employee, but we are reimbursing it. That means we are asking employee to rent out a house and we will reimburse that amount, monthly amount. එහෙමත් වෙනවනේ නේද? ඔයා ගයක් ගන්න අපි කුලිය දෙන්නම් කියනවනේ. එහෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So the value we are giving as an allowance should be the benefit for that period. Sometimes we are collecting some part of the housing benefit from employee. So at that time, the employee's benefit should be the difference of the previous calculation and the amount deducted from the employee's salary. So we have to consider the difference between the two amounts as a benefit. So this is the quantification of the benefit for vehicles. දැන් මෙතන ඉන්න ගොඩක් දෙනා ඇතිනේ වාහනයක් එහෙම ආයතන වලින් හම්බුන. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ගෙයකට වඩා වාහනයක් හම්බ වෙන්න තියෙන ඉඩකඩ වැඩි. If you have received a vehicle, sometimes vehicle with a driver and with the fuel, at that time it is also a non-cash benefit because we are not receiving cash for that benefit. If so, we have to calculate the non-cash benefit of that transport traveling benefit. The value of the benefit from private use or of any motor vehicle. So we are applying this table considering that they are using this vehicle for private use also. That means if there is a vehicle and that vehicle is used only for the official purposes, we cannot collect any amount as a vehicle benefit. But we know that if we are providing a vehicle to a taxpayer or employee, that vehicle should be, or that no, in normal course, that vehicle is using for a private purposes as well. So that is why we are applying, we have considered this amount as a benefit. So if we have given a vehicle with the on vehicle only, 20%, 20,000 should be considered for month. If that is vehicle with driver, 30%. Vehicle driver and with fuel, that is 50%. That means 50,000. 50,000 per month should be considered as a vehicle benefit. And for a year of assessment, we should multiply it by 12. Then there are some conditions. If that benefit is given for a official who has mentioned in the circular or a directive or a regulation issued in the issued by the government, that category, for that category, only 25% of the cost should be considered for the as a benefit. Not the total amount, but the 25% of that amount should be considered as a benefit. Then government officers ලට තමයි මේක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් තියෙන්නේ, රජය companies වලට නැහැ. එතකොට මේ අපි consider කරන value එකෙන් 25ක් විතරයි අපි සලකන්න ඕනේ මෙයාගේ private use එකට ගත්තා කියලා. Where the employee is required to be provided with a vehicle fully or partly for office use and entitled to a payment of for fuel under any circular. That means for a vehicle, 25%, for a fuel, 25% should be considered if that person is a government official that has mentioned in the special regular directive or regulation. And we will give this benefit only to a one vehicle. That means if any employee has provided more than one vehicle, at that time for all other vehicles, market value should be considered. කියන වාහන එකකට වඩා වැඩිපුර දීලා තියෙනවා නම් එක වාහනයකට විතරයි මේ සහනයන් තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ government officials නම් මේ සහන ඇතුළුව මේ ඉහත සහනයන් තියෙනවා. මේකත් සහනයක්. Because we have given a provision. In that provision it says to consider fair market value. So if we are considering fair market value, if it is a rented vehicle, we know the rented value, the amount, that means we know the fair market value. So we are not going to consider that amount as a benefit to the taxpayer because that vehicle is provided not only to private use but for official use as well. So we can tax only the official use part, but personal use part, official use part is not a benefit for the taxpayer. Here, where the employee is provided fuel for more than one vehicle, then also we will consider 3C. 3C is this one. it is applicable only for one vehicle. That means 25% is applicable only for one vehicle. If there are more than one vehicle, for that vehicle, the total amount given by the institution as a benefit should be considered for the income tax purposes. If that is a then it is same as the motor vehicle. If it is a motor vehicle, then that 5,000 per month should be considered as a benefit. If it is without fuel, amount of such non-cash benefit shall 3,000 per month. If it is without fuel, 3,000 should be considered per month. That means for year it should be multiplied by 12. Then the quantification of the traveling, transport or related facilities. That means not the employer will give not only housing benefit and vehicle benefit, sometimes other benefits also provided by the employer. If they are providing that kind of things, that is also subject to tax. So motor vehicle used by field work provided by the employer, at that time, if we can calculate the number of kilometers, then it will be multiplied by 25 rupees, because considering 25 per 1 kilometer, or it should not exceed 20,000 per month. And if we are reimbursing some fuel or maintenance expenses, actual amount should be considered as an income. Then the communication facilities. Communication facilities means if it is for a government institution, 25% should be considered. If not, total amount is considered as a benefit of the taxpayer. Communication facilities means telephone bill payment, telephone allowances, like that. 25% should be considered for a government servant. If it is not government servant, the total amount should be considered for the taxation. Then the concessionary income tax rate, so that is not applicable. Earlier, sometimes banks and some boards, they are providing some loans to their employees for concessionary tax rates, so concessionary interest rates. So at that time we calculated some part as a benefit. Now we do not consider that part as a benefit. Then the next one is payment of telephone bills. The earlier one is telephone allowances, facility. Here that is a bill. That means reimbursement of the bill. At that time, 50% will be considered as a personal use and other 50% is for the official use. So for the official use, we cannot consider official part as a benefit, but private use part will be considered as a benefit to the taxpayer. All other cash benefits, market value should be considered. So these are the non-cash benefits. So we have to consider these non-cash benefits for the tax purpose of that individual. So you can read this circular. In the next week, again, I will remind these things because I have now already explain these things, but next week also again I will remind only this circular. In addition to that, we will discuss these tables in the next week. After that, we can finish employment income source, then we can start business income source after we finish these tables. So if you can please read these tables carefully, you can find these tables in the IRD website. Table 1 to table 8. In those tables, calculation methods also given, and more examples also provided in this table. So you can read that documents and you can calculate the tax liability based on that table. Okay. So if you have questions, you can ask now. ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. තේරුම් නැති තැනක් තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. කට්ටියම එකතු වෙලා ක්ලාස් එකට කෝඩිනේටර් කෙනෙක් පත් කරගෙන මට යාගේ contact details ටික next week කියන්න. ඊට අමතරව ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ වේගය වැඩිද තව හිමින් කරන්න ඕනද තව හයියෙන් කරන්න ඕනද ඒ ටික කතන්දරලා ඒකත් මට කියන්න. හරි. No issues. Is it clear? Okay. Okay, then we can stop the session. Next week, we can do the calculation using these tax tables. Okay, then we can stop the session now. Okay, thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, ma'am. What?